UFC Fight Night, Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris as usual. Fight by fight breakdowns, fight by fight predictions, specifically from that betting perspective. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you participate in the comments and make sure you press the thumbs up on this video as well. We would definitely appreciate it. For this UFC Fight Night, we know that Jessica Andrade is stepping in for Taila Santos. A decent main event as a result. We have 11 fights overall at the time of recording this. We have 6 of them on the prelims. We have 5 of them on the main card. So let's get to work. Fight number 1 of our prelims. We're looking at Clayton Carpenter taking on Juancamilo Ronderos. For Juancamilo Ronderos, he lost his debut to David Dvorak. That was nearly 2 years ago, May 2021. He's a southpaw. Stand-up's okay. He's quick on his feet. He's going to attempt takedowns. I think he's more of a grappler than he is a wrestler per se, but takedown attempts are an active part of his game. I wouldn't really say his grappling is overwhelming, but he does have a few submission victories. I mean, he only has 5 professional fights, 4-1. A few of those 4 wins are via submission. So he has that offensive grappling kind of proven in some ways, at least at a lower level. One of his biggest strengths is his consistent cardio, consistent pace. Let's see how he does in his second fight in the UFC, taking on the undefeated newcomer, Clayton Carpenter, who competed on Dana White Contender Series back in August. Decent overall on the feet. He's pretty explosive, pretty decent combinations as well, good toughness. He has good forward pressure with the combinations, kind of forces the action, I should say. Good takedowns as well from what I'm seeing. Good top control too. Not an easy fight to predict because we don't really know the level that either of these guys are at. Ronderos, I think, stepped in as a short notice fight versus David Dvorak, and then Clayton Carpenter, of course, making his debut. So we don't really know the level that either of these guys are at. But that said, I'm anticipating Clayton Carpenter being the more effective fighter on the feet here. I'm anticipating Clayton Carpenter being more commanding, more aggressive, more power, more pop on his strikes as well. I'm also anticipating Clayton Carpenter being better at landing takedowns amongst these two fighters. I believe that he'll have a top control for a good portion of the fight. Not really impressed with either fighter per se, so I wouldn't be surprised if it went in either direction. But from what I'm seeing, Clayton Carpenter seems to be the obvious pick here.
Yeah, we get a fight where both guys can strike, both guys can wrestle. But I do think Carpenter's sharper in both areas. I think he's going to be the better striker here. He's going to have the reach advantage. And as Harris indicated, he can land some takedowns as well, get that top control, or even defend Ronderos' takedown. So I like Clayton Carpenter. Both guys are pretty okay in each area, but I just have Carpenter being the better guy in those areas. So I got to go with him for that reason. So Clayton Carpenter is my pick.
All right, second fight, we're looking at AJ Fletcher and Themba Gorimbo. For AJ Fletcher, he's 0-2 in the UFC now after a unanimous decision loss to Angie Lusa back in August. A lot of movement around the ring, some switch stance. He has decent striking. Look for feints and level changes, particularly in his attack. Look for consistent forward pressure as well. He is primarily hands on the feet in terms of his striking, so mostly boxing. He does get a bit predictable with his movement in some ways. His striking defense also isn't the best from what we saw in his last fight, but he does have good takedowns, good entries, good top control. We see a couple of UFC fights there, 2.3 takedowns per fight at 40% accuracy. That shows you that he can land it. His last fight showed me, however, his takedown defense is not the best on top of some cardio issues that he has. So let's see if he can get it together in his third fight in the UFC at this point, as he takes on Themba Gorimbo, who's making his UFC debut as well. A lot of UFC debuts on this card. Themba Gorimbo has decent striking, has sort of a decent striking wrestling approach to his game. which can work in a lot of situations. Regular jab usage, he can take his time, he can really look for his shots, pretty composed, generally has that slower tactical approach to his striking. But once he starts to explode for combinations, that's where he sort of loses a bit of that control, loses a bit of that technique that sometimes works against him. The takedown attempts, I mentioned that wrestling approach as well. The takedown attempts are an active part of his game. He has solid top control. He's okay with a bit of a lay and pray type of style as opposed to aggressively looking for ground and pound. And from what I've seen from him, he has a pretty good cardio. Gorimbo, to me, is going to have some key advantages in this fight. Only 2 inches in height, 5'10" versus 6 foot, but he's going to have an almost 10-inch reach advantage for Gorimbo specifically. And I think that's going to be a big factor. I think Gorimbo's striking is better. On top of that, we've seen AJ Fletcher outstruck in both of his UFC fights so far. We've learned that Fletcher's striking defense isn't amazing, like I said, especially as his cardio tank wears out. And Gorimbo, I mean, he can really execute on that sort of patient, long striking style that he has if he game plans well for it. I think that both guys are susceptible to takedowns. I think that's where this fight will be won and lost. AJ Fletcher can go out there, needing a win in his third UFC fight, land takedowns all day. But I just don't see that happening because, again, I can't quite rely on his cardio tank in addition to his subpar striking from what I see. Instead, I see Themba Gorimbo having better moments with the striking. And as the fight progresses, potentially showing that ability to keep it on the feet and maybe even land takedowns of his own. Again, I think the 10-inch reach advantage is going to frustrate AJ Fletcher in this fight, similar to how the 7-inch reach advantage was able to frustrate AJ Fletcher in his last fight versus versus Angie Lusa. So I can see Themba Gorimbo frustrating him. If nothing else, this is a 50-50 fight, and AJ Fletcher is a huge favorite, and that just doesn't make sense to me because he hasn't shown me anything. So I'm going to go Themba Gorimbo here. Some key striking advantages and maybe even matches the wrestling, but above all, better cardio. Themba Gorimbo is going to be my pick.
Okay, so Gorimbo, what I got from his footage, he looks pretty green in the striking. He is effective, so he can definitely land his shots with that reach advantage. He's gonna be able to do that pretty effectively in this fight. But as far as technique, he looks a bit green. He utilizes that wrestling in a lot of his fights to get the wins. I think I agree with you that this fight's going to be a lot of it's going to be wrestling. That's going to decide the winner. Fletcher has that wrestling body type versus Gorimbo. I see Fletcher getting this one done. I see him out wrestling Gorimbo. Fletcher's fought the better guys. He really needs a win here, and I think that the UFC is giving him this guy to get a win. I think they want Fletcher here to get a win. His last 2 fights were really tough fights in the UFC, and this Gorimbo guy is actually coming in with 1 win against Julio Rodriguez. Prior to that, he lost to Henderson Ferreira. So I think they're bringing him in to lose, man. And I think Fletcher is going to out-wrestle him. Might even get a finish here, but AJ Fletcher is who I'm going with.
All right, let's take a look at fight number 3. In that case, we are looking at OSP taking on Philipe Lins. For Ovince St. Preux, split decision win versus Shogun back in May. He's a switch stance fighter. He's a patient striker, very relaxed in the ring. Point fighter, so don't expect a high pace out of him. Kind of plays that counter puncher role as well. A lot of kicks to his game. Good striking IQ overall, but he does throw 1 strike at a time, so a little bit limited there. His movement is decent as well. Good distance control. He stays just out of range. We know skill-wise, Ovince St. Preux can pretty much do it all. He can clinch, he can grapple. He lands over a takedown per fight, 9 wins via submission. Over 40 professional fights, just a diverse MMA veteran, right? What's lacking is his cardio, his pace as well. Just doesn't really have that extra gear to his game. Going up against Philipe Lins, who had a unanimous decision win over Marcin Prachnio back in April. Philipe Lins is introduced as a striker, solid stand-up, good long jab. He can put out good punching combinations together as well. Good hands in general. Look for him to control the center of the octagon. Look for him to be the fighter closing distance. especially against an OSP who likes to fight from distance. And Felipe Lins also showed me in his last fight that those takedowns can be an active part of his game. He landed 4 of them in that last fight. And OSP has just 66% takedown defense. So that could be a factor in this fight. I could see Felipe Lins potentially resorting to that for this fight as well. I think in this fight, the pressure and the pace of Felipe Lins could be a factor. OSP's counter-striking ability could also be a factor for this fight. You know, catching Felipe Lins coming in, it's very possible that that happens. Needless to say, this fight has a few variables associated with it, so there is some risk. I'm not looking to parlay this. I'm not looking to call the underdog on this either. From making a pick perspective, I got to go with Felipe Lins. I just think he has more of that dog in him. I trust his pace. I trust him to be the person that's going to, you know, drag the fight out, make it scrappy against an OSP who doesn't really have the best cardio. So Felipe Lins is just going to work his way to a win here. In addition to some key, let's call it pacing advantages that I anticipate for him in this fight. So I'm going Felipe Lins. I think he gets the job done.
Yeah, this is a tough fight because both guys are guys you can't really trust, right? But OSP, it doesn't look like he is motivated as he was before. He's not looking good in these fights. In this fight, I think Felipe Lins is gonna have the better boxing. OSP is gonna have the kicking advantage, but he doesn't throw that many kicks, and he's kind of hesitant in there. He's not really active with his striking, and he kind of just lets the rounds play out. And it's a tough one, but I do like Lins in this spot. Coming off a win here, he's looking to make it 2 in a row in the UFC. I could see him using his boxing, having the faster hands, and hurting OSP at some point. I just think OSP is not getting better each fight. I think he's degressing at this point. So I think this is a good spot for Felipe Lins to get the win. But again, you can't trust Felipe Lins as far as parlays go. But he definitely should get this win.
All right, fight number 4. Let's look at Jamall Emmers versus Khusein Askhabov. Jamall Emmers, it's been a year and a half since his last fight. He lost to Pat Sabatini at that time. That was August 2021. Very explosive and dynamic in the stand-up, but at the same time, he's very composed. You know, he has a good long jab, good long strikes in general, good movement. Look for switch kicks, jumping knees, calf kicks, head kicks, things like that. Again, just really good diversity to his striking. And, you know, he has a well-rounded skill set. He has a solid ground game as well. He was a collegiate wrestler. He's landed 7 takedowns in 4 UFC fights. You know, he's a BJJ brown belt. So, you know, legitimately credentialed on the ground, pretty decent dynamic stand-up, just a well-rounded fighter overall. Khusein Askhabov, he's an undefeated newcomer. We see the record there looking impressive on paper, 23-0. He's Russian. He's 28 years old. You know, hasn't fought in 3 years, which is, I think, is the most interesting part of it all. He's a patient striker from what I'm seeing in his footage 3 years ago. Also an explosive striker, really likes that calf kick, and unsurprisingly has a good ground game. The grappling is there just as much as the wrestling. Has that true Russian style, you know, relentless attempts, good chain wrestling, all of that expected stuff. It's worth noting that Askhabov is coming up in weight for this fight. This one's taking place at featherweight, 145 pounds. He normally fights at 135. That could be a factor here in terms of impacting his game plan, impacting the wrestling. What makes this fight even more interesting is that Jamall Emmers has a lot of advantages on paper, at least. I think Jamall Emmers is the better striker. I think Jamall Emmers will be the bigger fighter, at least, with the 2-inch height advantage. And even if we say that Askhabov is the better wrestler, we know that Jamall Emmers comes from a wrestling background, and he may be able to defend himself effectively, or he may be able to stop it from getting to the ground completely. We don't know, right? I think there are a lot of variables in this fight, considering both of them had some time off. So in some ways, it has to be a bit of a gut feel. And with the gut, I'm going to trust the Russian. You know, I have to think that the move up in weight class for him is not going to be a problem, considering that he took 3 years off. He's been training this entire time. I think he was supposed to have a couple of fights in the UFC in 2022. I didn't check the details on why those ones did not happen. But, you look at it at 28 years old, 3 years off, he could be just entering his athletic prime right now. I think his striking, while not as good as Emmers, at least looking at footage 3 years ago, I think he can still be explosive. I think he can still push the pace. I still think he has enough power to touch Emmers, and more importantly, I think he's going to engage in the wrestling no matter what Jamall Emmers has to offer. I trust that Russian style to land on that American style more times than not. And I think that Askhabov is going to be able to implement that in every round if needed. So I'm expecting Khusein Askhabov to come back after 3 years looking good. Emmers is a good opponent on paper, but a beatable opponent at that, as his record would indicate, 18-6. So I'm going with the newcomer, Khusein Askhabov. That's going to be my pick.
Yeah, I mean, you hit a lot of good points, man. This is gonna be a tough one with both these guys being good wrestlers. Emmers does have that background as well, that collegiate wrestling, and Emmers is a big featherweight, fighting a guy that's moving up in weight. So Emmers likely is going to be the bigger guy come fight night, and he's athletic. He's a really athletic guy. He could be the physically stronger guy as well when they clinch. Now, when I look at the newcomer, again, his competition is kind of sketchy. The guys he's fighting, even guys that I think there was a guy I was looking at. He beat. I think he was like 7-0 or 7-0. No, not that guy. Not the 7-0. I think 9-1. But I looked at click on that guy, Donovan Desme. So he was 9-1, and now he's 16-7. So again, it's not a bad record, but this guy really hasn't, and that's one of the better guys he's fought. And he fought a 7-0 guy that hasn't fought since. So I don't know where he's at. But again, the footage you're looking at, he's going for the win. The one thing he has the advantage on with Emmers is that jiu-jitsu, that the grappling. Emmers, as far as the wrestling, I'm not sure who's going to be better. We're going to find out come Saturday. But as far as the submissions and the leg locks and the actual grappling, I got to go with Askhabov in that spot. He's definitely he looks really skilled. He's getting arm bars, he's getting heel hooks, and we've seen Emmers get a heel hook against Sabatini. So this guy has a couple of heel hooks as well. So I like Askhabov only because of the submissions, the grappling. I think a lot of this fight's going to be grappling. Again, it could be a situation where the grappling cancels out and they strike. But even in the striking, as good as Emmers is technically, Askhabov is going for the kill. Like he's trying to hurt you. He's trying to get you down. He's trying to get you in a position, take you down, submit you at some point in that fight. So I'm going to go with Askhabov here. But again, this is off like gut feel here. I just think that at some point he's going to latch in a submission and get the win here using his grappling.
All right, let's move on to fight number 5. We have Lina Länsberg taking on Mayra Bueno Silva. Lina Länsberg lost to Karahosa back in October. Just don't think her striking is the best. She does have a good long jab that she uses regularly as she fights from the outside. Otherwise, I wouldn't say her technique or her movement is the cleanest. Her forward pressure isn't really the most effective, but she is active. She has a good clinch that she's looking for. Not the best takedown defense, not the best off of her back in general. Her game plan is interesting because really she's just looking for kind of that Holly Holm style, let me clinch you against the cage and kind of score points that way. That's really it in terms of her game plan. She's taking on Mayra Bueno Silva, who's on a 2-fight winning streak after beating Stephanie Egger back in August. Mayra Bueno Silva is a striker. She has that Muay Thai style, really good calf kick, good overhand right, solid jab as well. She is a good pressure fighter, good combination of looking to engage but still having technique. Being aggressive, having good power, but still, again, having that technique and remaining in control. She has a good second gear as well. A bit one-dimensional, can't really change up her style of attack. But I'm referring to her striking style. But she is a good overall fighter in that she's a good grappler as well. We see her record there 9-2. 6 of those 9 wins are via submission, including her last fight. And we saw how quickly she landed that submission on Stephanie Egger. Again, good grappler to that respect. Her last fight again shows that she is a bit susceptible to takedowns, but the grappling being really dangerous, that wouldn't really matter in this fight. She does slow down a bit. It does take away from her explosiveness. It does take away from her ability to commit to pressure, but she can still be effective and still be a power threat. I think Bueno Silva is going to be too much here. I mean, I won't spend too much time on the prediction itself. Lina Länsberg isn't really able to take these girls down or to keep these girls down. I don't think she'll be able to hold Bueno Silva against the cage either for the entire fight. And then I see Bueno Silva's striking being too much, too good, too dangerous. The power could really come into play. The calf kick could be a significant factor throughout the fight. I don't anticipate Bueno Silva having much of an issue in this fight overall. I mean, I get why she's as big of a favorite as she is. Mayra Bueno Silva is going to be my pick pretty comfortably in this one.
Yeah, I like Mayra Bueno Silva as well. Lina Länsberg, elbow queen, turned into a wrestler or a grappler, fighting a really, really, really good grappler, and Mayra Bueno Silva. And again, she has some good striking as well to go along with that. She's on a different level. Länsberg's 40 years old, on a losing streak as well. So I think Silva gets it done, man. I think this is a good spot for her to get another win here in the UFC. So I'm going to go Silva win.
Final fight of our prelims, fight number 6 overall on the card. We're looking at Nazim Sadykhov versus Evan Elder. For Sadykhov, he's on a 7-fight winning streak after, of course, we see his record there, losing his first professional fight. He competed on Dana White Contender Series back in August. Of those 7 wins, 5 KO TKOs, 1 submission as well. So he is used to finishing his fights. He's an explosive southpaw, good clean stand-up, decent overall striking technique. Notice that he covers up pretty well, which is always important to note. Good in and out movement, good timing, but also good forward pressure and good combinations. The power and accuracy is definitely there as well. With what I see from him with respect to a ground game, gonna keep it standing. Generally a solid takedown defense, but he can get taken down. But from what I've seen, when he does get taken down, pretty decent with the scrambling. He can definitely work his way back up. And what I always try to sort of study with fighters that are used to getting finishes is what does their cardio look like? I think 1 or 2 of his fights, he showed me great cardio with late fight power. I think it was his last fight that he got a round 3 or something like that, knockout. Looked good, right? Looked good in that fight. Evan Elder lost his April debut. That was to Preston Parsons. He's a switch stance fighter. Look for good activity out of him, good pace, explosiveness, likes to come forward, likes those kicks, the high kick, the body kick especially. And again, he can be explosive with the takedown attempts, though don't really expect it to be an active part of his game. Again, I won't make this prediction long either. I like Nazim Sadykhov. It's not to say I'm super confident with him here, but from what I'm seeing, Nazim's striking looks a little bit more efficient, looks a bit more clean, more polished, more controlled. Also, a lot of people have tried to sort of implement that takedown game against Nazim Sadykhov. And a lot of people have been unsuccessful at that. So I don't think Evan Elder is going to find success there either. Elder has power, has explosiveness. He can definitely make an impact. But I believe that Sadykhov has more skill and should get it done. Of course, 2 newcomers. We don't exactly know where they are at. I mean, of course, Evan Elder's second fight, but essentially 2 newcomers. So there are question marks from that perspective. But analytically, I like Nazim Sadykhov to get this done.
Yeah, I like Sadykhov in the spot, man. He's a more dangerous striker. Elder is decent everywhere, though. He's one of those guys that can do everything. He has decent striking. However, Nazim is just the better striker. He's going to hurt this guy, and he's finishing guys in the 3rd round. That's a big thing, right? So Evan Elder can definitely pull off the upset, but I just think Nazim Sadykhov is the better guy. I even think he can get some takedowns in this fight. When Evan Elder, in his last fight, he was getting taken down pretty easily, albeit it was against a good wrestler. in Preston Parsons. But I think Nazim has some good wrestling chops as well. And if he can't get the takedowns, even if he gets taken down himself, if Elder takes him down, he has shown the ability to. He has that heart to fight. Even if you get him in a submission, he'll fight it. He'll defend it. He'll get back to his feet, and that's something I like when I see that heart early in these fighters. So this guy could be a guy that is special in the next couple of years because he does have the tools. He has the wrestling. He has the submissions ideas. He knows what's going on with the submissions. He has really good striking. That's improving each fight. So I think Nazim is a good pick here to get the win.
All right, let's finish up with the prelims there. Let's move on to our main card. We're looking at Jim Miller versus Alexander Hernandez. Good lightweight scrap here. Jim Miller's on a 3-fight winning streak after beating Cowboy Cerrone back in July. Good wrestling, good grappling. Those are his specialties. On the feet, he's a southpaw, serviceable stand-up, improving stand-up, even this late into his career. On the feet, he's willing to engage. The striking looks cleaner. His in and out movement looks better, improved footwork as well. The fakes and feints are an active part of his game. In addition to, again, the improved movement, the improved footwork. He's going to use that calf kick regularly. We know that he's one of the first to do that in the UFC. His left straight is probably his best punch, and we definitely have to respect his power and his finishing ability. 1.6 takedowns per fight, 43% accuracy, as we can see there. I wouldn't say it's a super active part of his game. It's not an overwhelming wrestling style that he's going to present to you. But again, he's very capable on the ground and has that high level grappling to go along with the ability to land the takedowns too. Of course, veteran of the sport, 35 pro wins, 19 of them are via submission, including that last fight. So he's legitimately dangerous on the ground. Alexander Hernandez is on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Billy Quarantillo back in December. Pretty well-rounded, at least on paper. Good switch stance, style on the feet, good crisp boxing, good kickboxing technique, good power and explosiveness as well. I really like his calf kick, his movement, his striking IQ, and the striking diversity as well. Has the wrestling. He's going to go for takedowns. He's a BJJ black belt. Again, just really well-rounded, especially on paper. The cardio, though, has been an issue in the past with Alexander Hernandez. We saw that especially in his last fight, really slowing down really after round 1. That cardio factor from Alexander Hernandez makes it a really tough fight to predict because you probably like Alexander Hernandez better on paper for a number of reasons. But, just like Hernandez's last fight, I can see him looking good early. I can see that striking, being cleaner, being at a higher level of skill. I can see Alexander Hernandez landing takedowns. Jim Miller only has 47% takedown defense. But again, that cardio, it really concerns me. We know that Jim Miller can out-tough Alexander Hernandez the same way that Billy Quarantillo was able to do, right? Again, Hernandez looked great early. Billy Q has that unlimited cardio that we're aware of, out-toughed Hernandez, and then Hernandez was on the retreat as soon as round 1 was over. Jim Miller can definitely have moments with the striking too, where his power is something to watch out for against Hernandez. We know that Jim Miller can last longer. We know that Jim Miller can land takedowns of his own, and this could be the type of fight where Alexander Hernandez is going to have to get Jim Miller out of there in round 1. I want to go with Hernandez. I want to think that he really needs to win here. 2-fight losing streak, as I mentioned. I want to think his striking is going to be too much for Jim Miller, but I think looking at the odds, there's really great underdog value on Jim Miller that I just can't ignore. Jim Miller, I think, has the tools to beat Alexander Hernandez. I think that, he can keep up on the feet. I think his power is a threat. We've seen Hernandez rocked before. I think Jim Miller can land takedowns of his own, and most importantly, the cardio, the toughness, the grappling as well. This fight to me is 50-50, if nothing else. And when I see the odds the way they are, I got to jump on it. Jim Miller, I'm going with the underdog, plus 190. I think he gets it done. And I think it's going to be by way of better cardio than Alexander Hernandez.
Okay. I actually don't think this is a 50-50 fight. Okay, let's start with Jim Miller, man. This guy's still getting wins. He's still dangerous. He's gonna have the grappling, the jiu-jitsu advantage, the submission advantage in this fight. So he can definitely get the win here. And you can't count him out. A lot of times he's counted out, and he ruins people's picks for the day or ruins people's parlays in the underdog role. Alexander Hernandez, in his last fight, though, he looked bad after the first round. He was looking good in that round. He likely won the first round, but as the round was ending, and the second round was a completely different fight. He gassed, but he has shown in the past that he can go 3 rounds against OAM, and he's fought some other guys to decision, and he looked pretty decent. Like Francisco Trinaldo's another fight, but in that fight against Billy Q, there's 2 things that messed him up in that fight. First thing was it was featherweight, so he was fighting I believe, was it featherweight?
Yeah, they were yeah, he moved down in weight, so that was a featherweight.
So that's a big thing. So the first thing is he fought at featherweight, so that's gonna mess you up when you're already a lightweight. Now you're gonna cut down to featherweight. So that's gonna be taxing on your body. The second thing was he was fighting a guy in Billy Q who's like the Energizer Bunny. This guy does not get tired, and not only doesn't get tired with that great cardio, he puts on a high pace. So if you're tired, he's going to make it look worse. So that's the wrong opponent from the fight at featherweight. If you can't finish him, it's not going to work out for him 8 times out of 10. So I understand what happened in the last fight. I think this is going to be a completely different fight. I don't think Clay Guida has the pace of a Billy Q, not even close. I think Clay Guida also slows down after the first round.
Jim Miller, you're talking about? Jim Miller?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that Miller slows down after the first round as well. Thanks for that correction there. And so because I think Miller doesn't have the best cardio, he's old. I could see Hernandez big brothering him in this fight. I think the power they both have good power, but I think Hernandez has a bit more pop. And I think he's the quicker striker. I think he's the better boxer, the better wrestler. So you should be able to keep it on the feet. Cardio, I give the edge to Guida, but I don't give him that much of an edge. And there's a chance that Hernandez actually has better cardio that come fight night. I'm going to go Alex, man. I think he wins this fight. I think Guida needs to hang it up. And I think this is a fight that is going to get him closer to that.
And again, just to make sure, we are talking Jim Miller, not Clay Guida. But
sorry.
Two super veterans, I get it.
Yeah,
2 super veterans of the sport, I absolutely get it. But just clarifying, Alexander Hernandez is going to be your pick for that one. So we're going to move on to our second fight.
And I apologize for the mix-up because Guida, we know, is a legend like Miller. So I'm basically messed up here. Well, yeah, I got Hernandez winning this fight.
All good. Fight number 2 of our main card, we're looking at William Knight versus Marcin Prachnio. William Knight, 2-fight losing streak, lost to Devin Clark back in April. In the stand-up, look for him to play more of that counter-puncher role. He can definitely be explosive. He definitely has that power. Decent calf kick that he likes to use pretty often as well. Very physically strong, and he can use that strength to land takedowns, 2 takedowns per fight, almost 50%. From an accuracy side of things. But he also has decent transitions on the ground, right? Not really the best takedown defense, but still good ground IQ to not just rely on physical strength, but to also rely on some technique down there. His cardio has not been as much of a red flag as it used to be, but that is still something that I'm always going to caution with William Knight. His frame is just too big for his own good. Marcin Prachnio lost to Philipe Lins back in April. We mentioned that one earlier on. Switch stance fighter, a lot of orthodox though. He fights from the outside, leg heavy attack, a lot of low kicks, calf kicks, side kicks for distance control, some front kicks as well for the same purpose. He has a karate background, so that doesn't surprise me. The hands are decent, not really the best in my opinion, but he is tough. He is willing to engage. His striking defense isn't the best. And although he's tough, he kind of just turtles up against guys that have good hands. You gotta like William Knight here. William Knight was the underdog on this one, so it is worth noting. I'm looking at William Knight now as a slight favorite. This is kind of pick'em type of territory otherwise, but William Knight was the underdog. I'll mention that. I think Prachnio has a style that is going to allow William Knight to come in, is going to allow William Knight to apply that legitimate power threat that he has. We've definitely seen Marcin Prachnio hurt before. Prachnio also has, again, that subpar takedown defense. I can see William Knight using takedowns to his advantage. Now, on the flip side, Prachnio can outpace and outpoint William Knight fighting from the outside, as William Knight doesn't really have the highest work rate. But I can't really see Prachnio doing that all fight, as he is somebody who also does not have the best cardio tank. So this is a very reluctant pick, but William Knight is going to be my pick. I think he has too many advantages in his favor. The power threat, I guess maybe the more dangerous striking, and both of these guys have bad cardio. So I'm going to kind of trust the power, trust the wrestling, trust the strength that William Knight has. William Knight is going to be my pick for this one.
Yeah, when you look at both these guys, it's one of those fights again where you can't really trust the either guy. You can't feel confident on either side. Marcin Prachnio could outstrike William Knight. William Knight could walk Marcin down and hurt him with a big shot. William Knight could take him down. So William Knight definitely has more avenues to win in this fight. And as Harris indicated, Prachnio's takedown defense, his grappling in general, is non-existent. And William Knight, he does have cardio problems, but he's improving. He fights through it. Marcin in his last fight was showing cardio issues against Lins as well. So they both don't have the best cardio. And the big thing for me was in the Marcin fight versus Philipe Lins, who's fighting earlier in the card. He got taken down 3 or 4 times. So I can see Marcin doing good with those leg kicks in each round, but once he gets taken down, he's going to lose that round or get finished. William has deadly ground and pound. I like William in this spot, man. This guy's grappling's improving. He has a big advantage there. Use your IQ, get this to the mat. You're the more well-rounded guy. William should win. He should make it easy if he uses his wrestling. But again, you can't trust these guys, right? But William is my pick.
Fight number 3 of our main card, we're looking at Josh Parisian versus Jamal Pogues. Josh Parisian beat Alan Boudreaux back in June. He's introduced as a striker, a bit of a sneaky calf kick to his game, pretty agile considering his size. He fills out the division at 265, solid movement. The footwork isn't bad. He's pretty light on his feet when he needs to be. Fights from range as well, has a good long jab, good regular jab usage. Looks like his boxing has improved, and he can close distance and doesn't really hesitate to engage with his opponents when he needs to. His takedown defense is not the best. That might be relevant for this fight. Not really the best off of his back in general. In his last fight, he showed that he can offensively land takedowns and have some solid ground and pound to end a fight. That's going to be pretty important in terms of potential outcomes for this one. Jamal Pogues is on a 2-fight winning streak. He fought on Dana White Contender Series back in August. He's aggressive. He has that forward pressure. He's looking to throw offense right away. But there is a bit more to his game. He has a good jab, good striking speed for the division. He's a former light heavyweight. He's a true light heavyweight to that point. Once he is controlled, he is a pretty solid boxer. He'll chip away at his opponents. The striking is a bit one-dimensional, though, a little bit predictable. Doesn't really bring too much diversity to his striking, albeit clean and controlled. He can land takedowns, good level changes, good wrestling, IQ, good clinch work against the cage. He's patient with attempting takedowns as well. It's been an approach that he's used in the past, but this fight is a little bit tricky because Jamal Pogues is not a true heavyweight. The biggest guy that he's fought was on Dana White Contender Series, and that opponent was 220 pounds. So I'm curious how he handles the full 265 of Josh Parisian. Closer fight than the odds may indicate. I think just based on size alone, I think Josh Parisian can also move and keep up with some of the speed advantage that Pogues will have. Parisian can also be a bit tricky on the feet with that calf kick, though I believe that Jamal Pogues is the better striker here. I don't think Pogues may not use takedowns much. He didn't do it on his Dana White Contender Series fight. I wonder if that has to do with fighting at heavyweight. Maybe it's not a style that he wants to implement, or maybe he just believes he has better speed, better striking than these guys. That said, I don't think he's going to have an issue landing the takedown should he go for it. Josh Parisian winning would not surprise me at all, but I have to go with Jamall Pogues. I think, just being the better striker, having the better wrestling, having the speed advantages, I think those are key advantages to make me want to bet on him. Sorry, not bet on him, but pick him, I should say. But still very much a heavyweight beware. Still have to be mindful of the weight advantage that Josh Parisian will have. But again, to clarify, making a pick, I'm going to pick Jamall Pogues on this. I'm going to avoid betting on this fight in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, this is a tough fight, man. There's way too many variables on both sides. Obviously, the size that Parisian is going to have in this fight, a solid this guy cuts to fight at this weight. Well, Jamal is just walking around right at this weight. So Parisian is going to be the much bigger guy come fight night. If he can get on top, if he can get in top position, he can really cause problems with that size. I don't see Jamal being able to get up. But Parisian does not have the best takedowns, but his striking is serviceable. He's able to, against Roque Martinez, he was able to look pretty good in the striking in that fight. So it is there. And he has won fights in the UFC versus Pogues, who, one thing I'll say about Pogues is he's coming off the Contender Series. He was on that show twice, man. And his first fight, he was in light heavyweight. And he was okay. He won the fight. But when he came back as a heavyweight, he was far better. He definitely improved in that gap. So he's definitely improving and getting that UFC opportunity. Fighting Parisian, who's kind of limited. If Parisian can't get this to the mat consistently, Pogues is going to outbox this guy. Pogues is the better boxer. At heavyweight, a lot of times it's who has the better boxing. Usually wins those fights, or who can really dictate the leg kicks. So Parisian does have some leg kicks, but I think the boxing, there's a bigger discrepancy there. He puts the combinations together well compared to Parisian, who's very, very awkward with his striking. So I got to go with Jamall Pogues here, man. I just think he's the better fighter. I think he's a more skilled guy, and moving up in weight could be a concern, but it could also mean that he's going to be the more mobile guy. He's going to be the better athlete in this fight, the quicker guy. So I'm going to go Jamall Pogues, keep it on the feet, use his boxing, get the win here.
Co-main event time, we're looking at Jordan Wright versus Zach Pauga. Jordan Wright is on a 3-fight losing streak. He lost to Dusko Todorovic back in October. Karate style on the feet. He has that kick-heavy style to his game. Decent tie clinch. Although he doesn't really have the best hands, he does have some power with his hands. We've seen him wobble a couple of opponents in the UFC so far. I feel like Wright may have a suspect chin, however, especially when engaging. He kind of leaves himself open. And he can kind of, use the takedown approach in his fights. 5 takedowns landed in the last two UFC fights that he's had. It could start being an active part of his game as he takes on Zach Pauga here, who lost to Muhammad Usman back in August. Very boxing-like in his stance. The hands are solid. We're going to see regular usage of jab, a lot of fakes, good combinations. He can really string his shots together. The technique and the IQ is pretty solid. The calf kick is pretty solid as well. Looks like his balance and his takedown defense is lacking a bit. So that could be important going back to Jordan Wright's takedown ability. Also important to note for this one, just the size of these fighters. This fight is taking place at light heavyweight. Zach Pauga is back down to light heavyweight after spending some time at heavyweight. He was around 245 pounds as a heavyweight. So coming down to 205, sort of Philipe Lins like. I expect him to be in shape. I expect him to be ready. I expect him to look good in this weight class compared to what he looked like as a heavyweight. And Jordan Wright, on the other hand, was a middleweight. Three losses in a row. I think he got rocked in all three of those fights. And he's coming up 20 pounds to 205. So, I mean, we know Pauga should be physically stronger here. Jordan Wright already has that suspect chin. I can definitely see Zach Pauga hurting him. I think Pauga is just the smart pick here, considering striking advantages, considering the size advantages as well. So I'm going Zach Pauga to get it done. I feel pretty comfortable here.
Yeah, I think Pogga's a tough matchup for Jordan Wright because that cardio after that first round, his cardio dumps, and Pauga has shown multiple times he can go 3 rounds. And in this fight, Pauga can take a better shot. Yes, he got knocked out against a heavyweight, but I've seen him take shots in the fights I was watching, and he holds it pretty well. He has heart as well, so it's a tough fight. Not really, but it is a tough fight because Jordan Wright is really dangerous in that first 5 minutes of the first couple minutes of the fight. And we've seen Pauga get knocked out against from Usman's brother in his last fight. He got knocked out cold, and Jordan Wright can definitely put his hands on him. Jordan Wright, though, the cardio makes you want to pick against him in every fight. The guys he beats are basic fighters that are walking to him, like Villanueva. Or what's that last guy? What's the other guy he beat? The other scrub, but he beat 2 scrubs in the UFC. And Pauga should definitely get it done, man. But I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Jordan Wright, man. Like I gotta go with the dog, man. Jordan's gonna get crushed, but I have to pick a dog here, man. And I feel like I'm forced to make this pick because I think he has a chance in that first 3 minutes. I think he could win. And another thing we have to look at is Jordan's was a huge middleweight. And now he's fighting at 205. So that might give him an extra 5 minutes in the fight, cardio wise. And like, he might be a different guy at this weight. Like 185 might have been him pushing himself to the limit because he's a really big guy. And that might be why he has chin issues and the cardio. And Zach Pauga, he hasn't really fought the best. He's 5-1. He's fighting low-level guys. Jordan Wright is definitely the most dangerous guy he's fought. So I'm going to go Jordan Wright. Again, reluctantly. Yeah, I'm going to go Jordan Wright to win this fight, but don't make a bet on this one. Don't make a bet. Okay, if you're going to make a bet, pick Pauga because likely Wright's going to gas out and get crushed. But I'm putting this pick in for the first 3 minutes. So Jordan Wright's my pick, and hopefully he improved the cardio, and I think he can get it done.
Main event time. In that case, we have Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield. I mentioned it at the beginning of this video. Jessica Andrade is stepping in for Taila Santos in this fight. So really just a week's notice. We know Jessica Andrade competed 3 weeks ago as well, where she beat Lauren Murphy on the feet, fights in the pocket, keeps that distance close to hand, stay tight. We know she's going to march down her opponents. We especially saw it in that Lauren Murphy fight. Really likes to engage a lot of combinations, the looping hooks, almost a borderline brawling style, but been a lot more tactful as of late. She's physically strong. She's going to use that to her advantage with wrestling, with grappling, almost 3 takedowns per fight, 55% from a takedown accuracy perspective. So she gets it when she looks for it. BJJ black belt, Brazilian. I mean, I don't got to speak to her grappling ability. She also has a decent defensive guard. She can scramble, work her way back up to her feet if she is taken down. Erin Blanchfield, 7-fight winning streak. She beat Molly McCann back in November. She's introduced as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Still just 23 years old, so still improving each fight. Very composed. Somebody who has good striking diversity. Somebody who's going to use her jabs effectively, the low kick, the fakes and the feints, different angles. Someone who's going to close distance well and give a consistent pace with good striking IQ. She sets up her ground game. She has a strong body lock, strong clinch, solid takedowns as well. Even more impressive takedown numbers than Jessica Andrade, albeit smaller sample size, 4 takedowns per fight at almost 70% accuracy. So she has not had a problem whatsoever getting these girls to the ground. Really good offensive groundwork, 75% takedown defense. So it is respectable, if nothing else. Just very well rounded and improving every fight. Blanchfield is legit. I mean, I do think she is a serious contender, potential future champion in this division. I mean, you think 5 years from now she's still going to be under 30. So she has all the tools, and she's going to have a key size advantage over Andrade in this one. She's going to have the full training camp as well. What does Andrade look like 3 weeks later? After you finish a fight, you feel good, your diet goes back to crappy, or do you stay in shape? So that's going to be key to see from Jessica Andrade. And again, like I said, Blanchfield's super legit. But from a prediction standpoint, I almost have to think that this is a bit too much too soon for Erin Blanchfield. Even with her original opponent, Taila Santos, I mean, that's an opponent who, definitely took some rounds against Valentina Shevchenko, right? So even Taila Santos may have been too much too soon for Erin Blanchfield. Of course, comparing to Jessica Andrade in this situation, we know that Jessica Andrade is the proven 5-round fighter. Erin Blanchfield has never been in a 5-round fight before. Andrade's pressure style, I think she can match the wrestling ability of Blanchfield. I think she has the greater grappling ability than Blanchfield does, despite Blanchfield being introduced as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. That high level experience. I mean, Jessica Andrade has fought the who's who in the division. Erin Blanchfield is not quite there yet. Her best win is probably Molly McCann. These are advantages that I think are too much to ignore. I don't flinch at the 3 weeks ago that Jessica Andrade fought. I have to assume that she wouldn't take this fight unless she felt like she was in good shape, unless she felt like she would have no problems with a 5-round fight. So I go Jessica Andrade for this one. Again, I think Erin Blanchfield is legitimate, for real, super contender. But this is just a little bit too much, a little bit too soon. That said, I also felt that way about Sean O'Malley versus Petr Yan. So this is kind of giving me that vibe, where Blanchfield can pull out a decision even if she doesn't quite win the fight. But just like that situation, I'm going to choose Petr Yan every time. I'm going to choose Jessica Andrade in this situation because, again, I think this is just a little bit too much too soon. So yeah, close fight, good fight. Curious to see what Erin Blanchfield looks like against these high level opponents, but I'm gonna go with Jessica Andrade to get the job done here.
Yeah, it's a fair breakdown. Fair breakdown. Blanchfield, this girl, really good. I think she's gonna be the better jiu-jitsu player in this fight. I think she's gonna be the more likely to get us, not likely to get a submission, but I think she's gonna have the better submission game in this fight. I think she's more well-rounded with the jiu-jitsu. So I think she's gonna have an advantage there. If this stays on the mat, she can definitely get a choke at some point. She's shown that she has a really good guillotine. But Andrade is a different beast. In the flyweight division, I only think let's say Shevchenko, Taila Santos, maybe Manning Thoreau. I think those are the only case. Shevchenko will beat Andrade, but I think those are the only fighters that have a chance to beat Andrade. I think the other 125 fighters on the roster are going to have a real tough time with this matchup because she's physically strong. So even though Blanchfield is going to be the bigger girl, it's going to be hard for her to lock up Kimura's any type of arm lock. It's going to be really tough as a jiu-jitsu player. It's going to be really hard because this girl's going to have such a strength advantage. Plus, she knows what she's doing. So she does have technique as well behind that strength. On the feet, though, it's night and day. All right, the grappling, you might want to argue Blanchfield is the better grappler. You can argue Andrade is going to be the better grappler with the strength and the wrestling and the top control, or Blanchfield with the more technical jiu-jitsu. You can argue back and forth. When it comes to the striking, it's not even close. It's like it's night and day. Andrade is a way better striker, and I think that's where she's going to win this fight. She's going to keep it on the feet. She's going to piece up Blanchfield. She's going to hurt her. As the fight goes on, it's just going to be out of reach for Blanchfield. She's going to be diving at legs, get desperate.
But Andrade, again, as you mentioned, fought everybody, fought the who's who in the division. So she's really experienced. Step too soon for Blanchfield. I think she's getting her L here in the UFC. So I'm going to go Andrade to pull this out.
All right, let's take it to Vegas then. Let's see what we got in terms of underdog. Let's see what we got in terms of parlay action as well. Starting with underdogs, of course, and I will read them out. Juancamilo Ronderos is an underdog. Themba Gorimbo is an underdog. Evan Elder, Ovince Preux, Jamall Emmers, Lina Länsberg, Jim Miller. Marcin Prachnio is the slight underdog now in that fight. Josh Parisian, Jordan Wright, and Erin Blanchfield.
Yeah. Okay. So Jordan Wright, I'm gonna have to go with him being the more experienced guy. It's a tough pick, but I think he has a chance. So I'm gonna go. That's my underdog pick of the week, but I wouldn't bet it.
All right, my underdog pick. Wouldn't bet either, just because I'm not interested in these fights that are very unpredictable. Themba Gorimbo. I think he can take advantage of some key advantages over AJ Fletcher in that one. And in terms of parlay action, who are you taking a look at?
All right, so I'm going with Clayton Carpenter, Nazim Sadykhov, and Jessica Andrade.
All right, so those three fights, Clayton Carpenter, Nazim Sadykhov, and Jessica Andrade, that would pay a 3.46. That means that $100 is going to give you a total return of $346. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will give you a total return of $865. For my ticket, first time in a little while, it hasn't been anything close to yours. I'm looking at Khusein Askhabov. I'm looking at Mayra Bueno Silva, and I'm looking at Zach Pauga. So those three fights would be a 2.87, meaning that $100 will get you a total return of $287. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return a total of $719. So let's sign off on that note. Of course, this has been UFC Fight Night. Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield, your full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you participate in the comments as well. We want to hear from you. How do you feel about our parlay picks? Who are your parlay picks? What underdogs are you considering? Anything you want additional insight on, let it be known in the comments, and we'll be more than happy to participate in that conversation. And most importantly, please subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you let somebody know about it. Let somebody know that is looking for clean UFC predictions. Send them this video. Tell them to subscribe to Boxing MMA Picks as well. Again, we would greatly appreciate that. But again, let's officially sign off now. UFC Fight Night, Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield. He goes by Zahn. I go by Harris. We are Boxing MMA Picks. And in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's get it.